If you're listening on podcast, be sure to tune in to our YouTube channel on YouTube at Wild and Weird WV.
Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast.
For well beyond 70 years, humanity has been told that there is nothing out there. You are it. We are all there is, and that everything that's been seen in the skies has a rational explanation and is in no way a threat to national security. Officially, this was the quoted version of reality when it came to the UFO topic. But in 2017, something happened. For whatever reason, one of the men in charge decided to step away from the shadows and into the light. He joined with others who were on a similar mission, a mission of disclosure. The past years of government denials began to be hinted at as cover-ups and misinformation that conspiracy theorists and UFO believers had long believed. Eventually, this would lead to even more higher-ranking witnesses coming forward, and historical public meetings and congressional hearings would ensue. UFOs, or UAPs as they were now called, were real, and they were likely not foreign adversaries. The truth was indeed out there, or so it seemed, and with this truth came a vital warning. Are we really ready for disclosure?
Welcome back to Wild and Weird Radio, everybody. It has been a while since we've had a regular scheduled show, but we promise we're still here.
We are still
You've been able to catch us on our lives on Thursdays at 8 p.m., but the regular schedule show has just been kind of on the back burner since the holidays and the end of CryptidCon. Well, the end of our cryptid convention run, really.
Yeah,
for this year.
pretty much.
And so it's just been a lot of time and haven't been able to get one out to you guys. But this week we're back and we've got some really intense show.
We've got a really intense show, but first we must do our thing.
Well, guys, so as you all know, this show is brought to you by our executive producers, Adam Good, Theresa's Haunted History of the Tri-State, Dewey Edwards, Spooky Appalachia, Larry Hose, Guitarchains Craig, Travis Aurednik, Geoffrey, Steele, Russ Bailey, Chris Coots, Ada Cox, Nancy White, Scott Holbrook, BigfootLittlefoot. I'm waiting for these things to scroll by, guys. I'm not just getting slow. Tommy Swiger, Terri Summerfield, Sarah Ramsey, and Julie Bug. Thank you guys for your contributions to the show and keeping this thing rolling, because it keeps the show free for everybody.
Rolling.
So thank you guys for weekly support and tuning in and helping us out and sharing the good news, telling everybody about all things wild and weird week in, week out. You guys are awesome. I would go ahead and at this point insert a Sky Daddy, but this is not that show.
It's not that show, so that's not how that works here. No,
Yeah.
this
all right. So we've got a really, really weird predicament where basically this show is the news, but it's not the news. We're hitting a topic that was introduced to you guys moments ago in the monologue, and it's one of these deals where we're faced between at this point an immovable object and an unstoppable force. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's it's part of something that's coming, and there's a lot of buzzwords around being used here. A lot of people are confused, and it's just a matter of time before people get even more confused, as I see it. So trying to stay on top of things is pretty much what we've always done here, as far as the whole big D word goes, disclosure. And we just wanted to basically come on and give a little bit of data, and point into what is actually there and versus what people think is there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to put it. So one of the buzzwords that Ron was mentioning is ontological shock. All right. So I'm going to sit here and assume that most of you guys did not sit in a philosophy course in college and actually paid attention. So, because I know I didn't, and I had to take up a little bit of a brushing to get myself up to speed here. But ontological shock and ontology. So, ontology, what that word means is it's essentially a branch of philosophy that is the science of what is. Okay. So it seeks the classification and explanation of entities. Now, those entities mean me, you, the relationship with God, all that kind of stuff. Now, what we're also looking at with ontological shock, what that means is that it's a state of being forced to question one's worldview. So we're already philosophically, we're chasing this idea of a higher entity, God, whatever you want to call it, as well as even determining our own self. So ontological shock is bringing all of that into question all at once. And what we're looking at, and what Dr. Mack, he had used this word back in 1994, and he had used the term ontological shock when describing the after effects of some of the abductees he had studied. Mm-hmm. He was referring to the experiencers who were forced into a new way of thinking after their experiences with what they believed were extraterrestrial intelligences took place. These were things that should not be there. We were told were not there. We were told that it wasn't part of our worldview, but suddenly it was injected into their life.
Yeah. And there it was. And now they had to deal with it. And it was a shock to the system, basically. That's what it comes down to. And that's kind of what it is. And, contrary to most people's beliefs, they think that these people who had these experiences, they wanted them to happen, or they imagined these wonderful things to happen. That's not the case. As Mac went on to say that, most of these experiencers would have much rather have had a medical condition than rather, accept what it was that apparently was going on.
So, in short, what he just said was that these patients would have rather been told they were crazy.
That's right.
Than face the reality of what could possibly have been happening.
Mm-hmm. Because it makes more sense.
And when we look at today, we see this being spouted out on the news. It's being spouted out between dozens and dozens of podcasts that are out there that everybody seems to, we know, we have the answers. This is what this is. And that in itself causes ontological shock.
Oh, yeah.
It's a predisposition to a belief system. Boy, that's not where you want to be right now.
No, and again, we used to preface this all the time the first year of the show. When we're talking about challenging the belief system, we're not talking about your faith or your religion. We're talking about a lot of the dogma or your preconceived notions. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those scenarios where the preconceived notions literally are going to have to get thrown out the window, or else you're going to have to get okay with a whole lot of stuff really fast.
Really fast. So let's talk about what we know versus what we think we know, okay? So what we know is regarding UFO and UAP topics. Since 2017, there's been a major fracture within the intelligence community, and it has been widening into a clear divisive gap. When you say it's a clear divisive gap, I would.
Yeah, it's a very clear and divisive gap. And if you guys listened to the show last week, the live show, you heard us reference the intelligence community. We've referenced it several times over the last few months because this is not the intelligence committee. This is the intelligence community. Mm-hmm. These are the people who are directors and CEOs of these companies who sit on these boards that are also involved with government action, like the defense committees or national defense contractors, things of that nature.
Well, a lot of people, when all this started, I know they all sit around and said, we've seen this before. This has all happened before, blah, blah, blah. I think we can all agree right now that we have never been this far out past the red line.
We've not been.
We have not been. So witnesses had been coming forward in greater numbers and starting to speak about not only UFOs and physical craft, but also about beings and relationships to other non-physical phenomena. Now, this is where it started to get kind of weird.
Yeah,
is
it gets
that
real
started
weird.
happening. Okay. And we're not even going to touch on a lot of that because we simply don't have time in this episode, but we will eventually. I have a feeling that it's going to probably prevail over the next few months, to be honest with you, depending on how things go. But it all started June 5th, 2023, when a former intelligence officer who worked with the UAP task force, David Grush, came forward and claimed that not only were UAP real, but the government had in its possession not only craft, but non-human intelligences. He also said multiple craft, as you recall. So on June 11th, Grush revealed to Ross Cohart on News Nation that the United States government had been involved in secret crash retrieval spanning about 90 years. 90 years, guys.
So let's roll that clock back 90 years from 2023. That would put us at about 1930s, and you're dealing with international espionage.
Yep.
You're dealing with crash recovery and retrieval here in the United States, one of the most famous being in 1947. And they can't talk about that one.
We can talk about Roswell, though.
Can't talk about Roswell.
We can talk about everything else. We can talk about recovered craft from, overseas that the Catholic Church was involved in helping us get. But we can't talk about Roswell.
What can you tell me about the Roswell craft?
Fortunately, those details were not approved for me to talk about right now.
Can't talk about
Can't talk about Roswell. No. But you're skeptics still. They like to hold on to all these belief systems, and they like to dismiss these claims. And they tried to drag Grush through the mud. It didn't work. He's still standing, by the way, guys, and he's getting ready to come out with even more, from what I understand. I think.
Yep, next week.
Yeah, next week we should hear more from him. So I don't know where this is going to go. We'll see. This may all just be for nothing at this point, depending on what he has to say next time. This could be old news. But to this day, he has stood and he's proved the test of time. But
according to him, there are more people waiting in the wings.
That's right. That's right.
It's gonna get wild and it's gonna get weird in the coming days.
That's the literal sense. Yes.
Yeah, because there are more people that are going to be coming out and making these statements about what they've seen, what they've experienced, what they've worked on, what they've handled, what they have encountered. Well, and shortly after the interview, when Grush did his big TV reveal, there were major discussions on how even more fantastic things that couldn't be revealed and couldn't be talked about yet because it was just going to be too much for us to consume.
Too much. We had to let's digest this first, is what was said.
There's things I kept out of the story that I think were just too shocking and certainly harder to confirm. And I didn't want to get too much into what I had been told about the different potential of there being beings. It's a lot of ontological shock with just the craft. And I felt like, let's just give this a minute and let's spend a little bit more time doing this reporting.
So again, we're revisiting the previous statement that Dr. Mack had said about ontological shock, that others have said it would shatter worldviews and belief systems, and that the ensuing shock would destroy humanity as we know it. I'm pretty sure that they did that a few years ago globally.
Right.
But how much worse it could possibly get from here as far as the social structures and worldviews.
Well, I don't know, but we do know disclosure is coming, either fast or slow at this point. And we need to ask ourselves a very important question. And you and me have been asking this question for about 6 years now.
Yeah.
Why? Why now? Because before this, we were told, none of this is real. UFOs are not a threat to national security. This is all just swamp gas, weather balloons, and people making up conspiracy theories. And then when we get a thing like, well, yeah, it is. That's actually, it's a threat to national security. Not only that, it's a threat to humanity itself, their well-being, but yet we're still going to open that Pandora's box. Makes you wonder why, doesn't it?
It really does. And personally, what it makes me think is that it can't be the thought that we possess these items that are world shattering.
No, it's not.
But it's the event of some kind of an arrival that would be earth shattering. And if we run through this controlled disclosure course, then it's kind of making that blow a little softer in the end.
Softer, yeah. Yeah, that's speculation. It's 100% speculation. We'll get more into that later. But as of right now, we have two options, and these are the options that you've heard about over the past couple of weeks. You've heard something called controlled disclosure, and we're going to talk about controlled disclosure versus the so-called catastrophic disclosure. And controlled disclosure begins, aptly enough, in July 2023, when Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that he was carrying out the legacy of former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. You guys remember him, right? Because he's the one who helped Bigelow with, the funding, AATIP, the whole thing.
And Harry Reid was conveniently
Yes.
from Nevada.
Yep.
That's right. And he's convenient from Nevada. There's so many little checkpoints and little threads on this thing, isn't there? I mean, it really is. But the UAP Disclosure Act is what he wanted to do, and it would give the government office 300 days once it's implemented to organize records in their possession and give them to a review board, members of which would be nominated by the president. How convenient, and approved by the Senate to determine whether certain documents should remain classified. This amendment to the National Defense Appropriation Act of 2024 adds over 60 pages of rules, guidelines, and dictates the eventual public disclosure of information concerning UFOs, UAP, and non-human intelligences. It is believed that a slow dissemination of this information over a period of years will be far less destructive than the sudden revelation that we are not alone. However, if we look closer at those provisions, we're seeing some political placating. When you say, Joe, isn't that what I'm seeing there?
Oh, definitely. There's the biggest thing to me is the fact that it said that, one, these members will be elected by the president or nominated, and then approved by the Senate. And then they would determine whether or not these documents should remain classified.
I believe it's a 9-panel committee or something like that. So,
Yeah.
kind of like a 12-panel committee that was alleged to exist at one time that did the same exact things, as I remember.
Yeah. This whole, it was what? Almost Majestic or something like
Almost
that.
something like that.
Something.
Yeah. Magic something. Yeah. The Gathering. Yeah. That's it.
And
12.
and we're now going to have this thing. It's on paper now.
Yeah.
What are we going to say? The Majestic 12. So these guys would be the semi-Majestic 9.
Yeah, that's it. The less than glorious. I don't know.
Less than glorious 9.
Jeez. I don't know.
Now, with all these rules, you got 60 pages of rules. That's like that thick a paper of rules. Okay,
Yeah,
that's a half-inch thick document.
Well, let's look at some of those provisions, because some of the provisions were just, to me, it sounds like a technological witch hunt or a power grab. Is what it sounds
Well,
like.
anytime the government is going to be doing anything, it's always going to be to ensure their own power.
Oh, well, this is true.
So among these many provisions, the UAP amendment was a section that said federal government shall exercise eminent domain over any and all recovered
Eminent
technologies of
domain.
unknown origin and biological evidence of non-human intelligence that may be controlled by private persons or entities in the interests of the public good.
Okay.
Like,
So,
I guess they're claiming that there are biologics in private possessions.
that sounds like what they are.
That's
claiming.
kind of what it sounded like. That's not something that I've heard alleged. I've always heard alleged that the government had all of these entities, but I've never heard that Jim Bob up the street had one stuffed in a mason jar full of formaldehyde.
Yeah. And Jim Bob probably has a government contract to work with that.
Right.
So
I
there's the
wonder
other
if he
moving
signed the
part.
same NDA as Tom DeLonge did.
Right? That's what I'm wondering.
But we can't look at some of these things and think that this is in any way helping us.
No.
Because I remember the first time that this was mentioned, Schumer himself had said that, this was going to help move along the private sector, right? That this was going to help get some of these technologies out into the private sector where people could work with these technologies and advance our own products, I guess you would say. But then you go through and you read some of these provisions and they're like, I don't think they're going to do that.
No, it sounds like.
And
they're
what
gonna
point in
grab
history have they ever done that?
them. Yeah. It sounds like they want all that stuff. They want it registered. They want it under one control. Well, those 9 apparently, whoever the sacred 9 are. But I don't know. I just thought that was, to me, they're basically saying that if this amendment passes, it empowers the government to literally just go in and demand private industry to turn over any and all technology that they deem to be non-human in origin. My question is, how do we know that it's non-human in origin? How do they know?
Well, that means that there's a baseline.
That
It has
means
to mean
there's a
that there's a
trail,
baseline
right?
to draw that from.
That's right. So there's got to be records. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, it have to be.
Okay. But those records aren't alleged to exist.
Allegedly.
Wow. This just gets even better and better, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you have to dig through so much.
This is deconstruction of
Red
the lie
tape.
sandwich to the best that it's
It
ever been
is.
done, I think. But yeah, man, I'm telling you, I just don't know. How can they differentiate this? Like you said, there has to be some kind of a roadmap. But the bad thing about the Schumer legislation, Joe, is really bad, and that is basically that it's going to follow the same guidelines similar to the John F. Kennedy assassination records. We talked about this on the live a little bit, but let's go a little deeper with it. And basically says the president's going to have ultimate authority here, and they can postpone disclosure. Whoever the president is has the right to postpone disclosure.
And how many of these records from JFK's assassination have we been released?
None.
Exactly. And it's been how many years after the cutoff date or the sunset on that amendment?
I'm telling you, dude.
We're well over the 60 years at this point.
It seems every modern-day president promises to release the JFK files, and then something happens, and we never get quite as much as was promised. Over the summer, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre announced the administration was done releasing files. National Archives and Records Administration says 99% of the files have been released. Not everyone's convinced. The New York Times reporting that about half of the remaining documents are being withheld.
And I'm telling you, if that happens, none of this will see the light of day. And if it ever does, they'll make sure everybody who's even remembers any of this will be long dead and gone before it hits the light of day. That's the way I see it.
It's a very real possibility because none of this stuff's going to be released to us. It's just not going to happen.
No, I think that this is just their way of saying, well, we heard your cries, and you know what? We were going to do it, but there's something there. We just can't. I'm sorry. You just can't see that. That's going to threaten national security. So the president's going to have to veto that. It's not going to happen.
Well, because of all of this red tape, because of all of the spider webs and everything that things are going to have to go through to get one iota of information to the general public, this opens up the doors to the second type of disclosure.
And one can understand this, right, Joe?
Oh, absolutely. We'd already experienced one individual like this who's been on the run in Russia ever since, and that's Edward Snowden, who leaked a ton of documents about the war on terror and 9/11 and all of that stuff.
A little bit of everything, yeah.
It was a massive info dump. And there are people, no doubt in my mind, who are sitting in the wings waiting for this kind of thing to happen. and they're just going to essentially, Control C, Control V, enter.
Yeah.
And they're going to drop another bomb, another massive information bomb. And that will cause a tremendous amount of shock. And then the government will again have to start backpedaling, much like they did in 2017 when the first thermal footage was released.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that wasn't released by the government, guys. The Tic Tac and the gimbal videos were not released by the Fed. They were leaked. They were sent out. Here you go. And then the government had to be like, well, yeah, they're real.
Yeah. Well, from what we understand, there was two parts in the government. One wanted it out, and one said, nope, don't you show that. And then somehow they managed to win over and actually got it out, which makes a lot of people think that it was all staged anyway. We'll get into that a little bit later too. But
which is very possible.
Yeah, sure it is. But let's go to the uncontrolled catastrophic disclosure and what all that is going to mean. The Schumer Amendment is being contested by others in Congress and the former DOTs, notably Congressman Tim Burchett, who is leading a bipartisan effort to unmask the truth surrounding the UAP issue much quicker. According to Burchett and others briefed on the subject, the evidence is there that these things have been encountered, recovered, and covered up, and that they are not likely any foreign assets. To that effect, the congressman added his own amendment to the NDAA that would fast-track this disclosure process to just 180 days rather than 25 years.
Which would be nice.
Mm-hmm. The fear is, many noted here, the interview from The Hill, and that was that Representative Mike Gallagher, a member of the House's Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, he had stated recently, new protections enacted by Congress resulted in, quote, all sorts of UFO whistleblowers coming out of the woodworks. These individuals, Gallagher said, are telling congressional investigators that they have been part of this or that UFO program, resulting in a variety of pretty intense conversations. And moreover, according to Senator Rubio, a lot of people are starting to edge forward, and we hear maybe coming forward. So basically what we're saying is they're coming, which is what you just got through saying.
Yeah.
Because the door is open enough at this point. We have pushed it so far at this point. We have not come this far. And they're going to come through that door. There's just too many of them at this point. So without the UAPDAs, the Disclosure Act's formal controlled disclosure frameworks, these whistleblowers may feel compelled to leak sensitive UFO-related information, potentially resulting in a catastrophic or uncontrolled disclosure, i.e., they're just going to come out and start talking.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Yes, it's illegal. Yes, 100%. Yes, you will go to prison for it. Yes, this, yes, that. However, there's this thing called safety in numbers.
Yep. And you can't arrest them all.
Exactly.
You can't kill them all.
Nope, because then you
might be able to arrest them all.
Right.
It's going to take you time to track them down because you got to remember that these guys are members of the intelligence community.
Yep.
And they can make themselves disappear very easily.
Very easy. They know the tricks. They've done them.
Yeah, they've done it before.
They have friends in high places.
Right. So these guys could do this and then go dark. And that wouldn't be unheard of. It wouldn't be surprising.
Mm-mm.
But they wouldn't be able to get them all.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at this. We've still not brought in Snowden. And
It's
it's been
a good example.
over a decade.
That's one person.
That's one person.
One person. I mean, that should tell you something right there. So, I mean, these guys have a good point as far as it goes. Do I think we need to wait 25, 30 years? No, we don't. And we may not be able to. Let's be real. But they do have a very good, I guess I would say, if there's any proof of it being a national security matter, that would probably fall in it. Because they're afraid these guys will just start talking and won't shut up.
Yeah, because when they do start talking, it's going to be a snowball effect.
Yeah, it is.
Now, looking at this, we've got an old playbook.
Mm-hmm.
There's an old methodology to how this thing was implemented. And, there were, for example, the Brookings Report back in 1960. And one of the headers of it was the implications of discovery of extraterrestrial life. And, we're dealing with all of these moral and ethical equations that go into play here.
We've talked about this before, but go ahead and read the actual implications of the discovery of extraterrestrial life for people, because there's a lot of people who, you can't really find this unless you go and look through the pages. This is just hidden there in a couple little paragraphs. That's where it's at. It's on page 182 and 183.
So according to the Brookings Report, the implications of a discovery of extraterrestrial life, the knowledge that life existed on other parts of the universe might lead to a greater unity of men on Earth based on the oneness of man, or the age-old assumption that any stranger is threatening. Since intelligent life might be discovered at any time via radio telescope, research presently underway, and since the consequences of such a discovery are presently and unprescribable because of our limited knowledge or behavior under even an approximation of such dramatic circumstances, 2 research areas can be recommended: continuing studies and determine emotional and intellectual understanding and attitudes and successive alterations of them, of any regarding possibility and consequences of discovering intelligent extraterrestrial life. Basically, that was an entire paragraph of 3-syllable words that can be summed up into, if these things are found, it's going to wreck people's worlds and their worldview, and we need to find a way to make it not a problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's basically
exactly
what
you
that
said.
interprets to
That's exactly
in
what you said.
layman's term.
Yeah.
So it might help to provide programs for meeting and adjusting to the implications of such a discovery. Questions one might wish to answer by such studies would include: how might such information, under what circumstances, be presented to or withheld from the public, and to what ends? What might be the role of the discovery scientists and other decision makers regarding release of the fact of discovery?
Why don't you sum that one up for us?
Basically, that is, how much can we trust the normal people? How much
do
can
we
the
wanna-
normal people
Mhm.
handle?
Yeah.
Because we're so smart.
Yeah, we're
They're
smarter.
not.
We're going to hold on to this. It's not for you. It's for us.
Yeah. So,
Right.
we're dealing with people in these elected officials.
Yeah.
People that you go and you sign on the ballot, and you put a check mark beside their name, and as soon as you do that, instantly you create a God complex with that individual.
Yep.
And now it is we're smarter than them. That's why we're here.
Mhm.
That's why we were elected. That's why we were put in, is because we're smarter than everyone else.
Yeah.
And we get to decide what's best for everyone because we're so smart.
It's an elitism, and we see this in every single thing, Joe. It's not just the government. This is a human construct. It is a human fallacy. It is something that humanity does readily, and that is why we have so much division in the world.
It really is. We're swimming in division all across the country and across the globe because of this very notion, not necessarily that extraterrestrials are real, but because one person's better than the other, or one person is smarter than the other.
Yeah,
Instead of trying to make everybody as smart as you, or as smart as your circle of friends, we're just going to keep this group of people in the dark. We're going to treat them like mushrooms, keep them in the dark, and feed them crap. And we're going to hoard all of this information for us, for, profiteering mostly.
Mostly.
Yeah,
that's true. But there was that part up there in the Brookings report that you read from 1960 that did mention something. The age-old assumption that any stranger is threatening.
Yeah.
Right? That this could bring humanity together as one.
Which is something that Reagan said. That was one of his big drops.
Multiple times. He was terrified of this. Either he was terrified or he really thought about it a lot. And, he let it slip a few times that This may have not just been a fantasy. This may have not just been some, kind of metaphor. Especially, I know that there was the one interview in 1982. That was the interview with Ain't It Cool, in which Spielberg said, it was on June 6, 2011, that details at the time he had screened his classic film E.T. at the White House for Reagan. Well, Reagan apparently turns around, stands up. He says he stood up and he looked around the room almost like he was doing a head count. And he said, "I want to thank you for bringing E.T. to the White House. We really enjoyed your movie." And then he looked around the room and said, "And there are a number of people in this room who know that everything on that screen is absolutely true." Now, Spielberg remembered, and he said it without smiling, but he said that, and everybody just laughed, by the way, and the whole room laughed because he presented it like it was a joke, but he wasn't smiling at all, he said.
Yeah, and for maybe the younger audience who might not know, Reagan was an actor.
Yep.
He was famous in Hollywood before he ever came to the White House.
He also had a UFO sighting when he was governor.
Yes. And, he viewed this movie, and had it been a joke, he had mannerisms just like everyone. There were tells on when he was making a joke and when he was being coy. And this was one of those moments, according to Spielberg, that he said it with a straight face. And
yeah,
there it was.
But it got better because in 1985, Reagan and the Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev took a break from negotiations to take a walk. Now, their conversation remained secret until 2009. Charlie Rose and Reagan's Secretary of State, George Shultz, stated that Gorbachev revealed that Reagan asked him point blankly if they could set aside their differences in case the world was invaded by aliens. It was covered in the Christian Science Monitor by Jim Moore. Schultz was talking about Lake Geneva Summit and mentioned the two leaders ducked out of the meeting to take a walk to a nearby cabin. "I wasn't there," Schultz said before Gorbachev cut him off. From the fireside house, President Reagan suddenly said to me, "What would you do if the United States were suddenly attacked by someone from outer space? Would you help us?" I said, "No doubt about it." He said, "We too." So that's interesting, Gorbachev said to much laughter. Let me put that into context for you. This was the Cold War.
Yeah.
Both sides were really prepping to blow each other off the face of the
Both
planet.
sides had people sitting with their thumbs on the button.
Oh, yeah. 1,000 times closer to nuclear midnight than we've been or are, to be honest with you. These people were ready to do the thing. They were buying enormous amounts of ammunition. They were staging, invasions around the globe. Yeah. And yet, during all that, the two most powerful leaders in the world, on a little stroll, had this conversation. If we were attacked, would you help us? And they both looked at each other and said, we would help each other. We would set aside our differences.
Fast forward that to 5 years ago, when President Trump went over to Korea and sat with the Korean dictator.
Yeah.
And when the Korean dictator was asked about what suddenly calmed everything down and made him agree to stop shooting off rockets, was the fact that what we talked about was very science fiction.
I don't know what that means.
Nobody knows what that means, but a lot of us can guess.
Yeah.
If we look back and we look at Gorbachev and Reagan's discussion, imagine the discussion between another U.S. president and another dictator.
And multiple ones. So in September 21st, 1987, it got real. This was during the speech before the United Nations, and Reagan spoke longingly for the world unity that would happen if aliens invaded Earth. At least that's how it was read. I don't think he really wanted this to happen. I think it was a fear, and he was just making sure that people understood their priorities. This is a way to set your, to set your priorities and rethink things.
Get how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
You can read that a few ways.
Yeah, most people thought that they meant, they were already here, et cetera, like you said. But who knows what the man really meant? All we know is that he put that in to another speech as well. So it was very much something that he worried about or he thought about.
But, a lot of people had interpreted that as the alien force already among us as foreign sleeper cells within our country, having an alien threat, something that doesn't belong here, that's here under the guise that it's supposed to be here. And again, 1985, we're still Cold War era.
Yeah.
We're on the tail end.
This is 87. Yeah.
And, you're looking at this is a very, very real thing. You watch, there's a show right now that I think it's streaming on one of the services, and it's based in the mid 80s, and it's about a family from Russia that came here, adopted a kid like it was theirs, and they're a sleeper cell. They are they were CGB agents that were implanted here. It's a wild ride. I've watched the first couple episodes of it, but it's it's that time frame. And then you look at this from the aspect that we're currently reviewing right now with disclosure, is not an alien force already among us. We go back and we're looking at Valiant Thor. We're looking at all these other visitors, that allegedly had meetings with other presidents.
It's interesting that you brought that up, because that's one of the big debunks of this, is because Reagan was a movie star, and they believe that he based this off of the day the Earth stood still. And we already know that the day the Earth stood still seems to have been based off of a possibility of the strangest event, the Valiant Thor.
Yeah.
It all comes full circle. It's like, what? This is just, it's insane how all this kind of plays out. But one thing that was of note, and you remember this, you have to, was when he suggested the unprecedented move to liquidate all nuclear arsenals worldwide. That's very the day the Earth stood still, by the way.
Yeah.
That's very Valiant Thor, by the way. Reagan also proposed a counter strategic defense initiative that he was going to give this to the Russians as well. This is how this plan worked. We would create this planetary defense shield. That's what this thing was. It was a planetary defense shield, and it was sold as a way to stop any incoming ballistic missile. All right, to put an end to the Cold War, the very simple way to do it was, look, we're going to put this shield over the Earth. If you launch, you won't be able to hit us. If we launch, we won't be able to hit you. There's no reason to have weapons of mass destruction. They cannot get to their targets. But at the same time, he was trying to liquidate those weapons of mass destruction. See where we're going with this?
Yeah.
So if he was already going to do that, then why do we need a planetary defense shield in place? What were we defending the planet against?
Well, the time, the only thing that was on people's minds was missiles.
Yes.
But there's the very real possibility that there was some type of foreign adversary that was aforementioned that could be coming.
Yeah. So basically what we're getting at here is it seems that this stuff has been there on the back burner for a while, and we're just now bringing it to the foreground. That kind of seems that way, doesn't it? The people are starting to pay attention, because if you heard the presentation this summer, during those, I made the assumption and assertion basically that UFO history is nonlinear, and it is, because we don't know anything until we learned a little piece about this one thing. It's like it forces us to go back and look at something else, hundreds of years away sometimes. And then it's like, oh, well, this makes perfect sense now. This little blurb makes complete perfect sense now. Like the whole Reagan thing. It makes perfect sense now. But back then it was just like, he's losing his mind. That's what they thought.
Yeah. A lot of people, the media turned that against him.
Yes, they did.
Just, as the media do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So moving into the modern era.
The whistleblower era, as we shall call it.
What we're looking at is a very, very, very caustic environment for intelligence officials, military contractors, pilots, various other high-ranking officials, where if this NDAA amendment goes in, the Schumer amendment, it will nearly force some of these guys who are waiting in the wings to release data at an unprecedented rate and at an uncontrolled rate. And it started already.
Mm-hmm.
It started already.
Well, I mean, it started with the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act. You know that. And, Grush even helped to create that. Non-linear, right? It all makes sense. Oh, well, who gave Grush the power to do that? Remember when he came out? Everybody's like, who gave him the power to do that? He's working for the government.
He gave himself the power to do it.
He helped, which means somebody helped him. Somebody wanted him to do it, or they would never have had him to help with that. But it gave the provisions that any person with relevant UAP information can inform Congress without retaliation, regardless of any previous non-disclosure agreements. So to encourage political witnesses to come forward, and the whistleblower legislation forbid any federal employee from retaliating against anyone providing authorized disclosure. There's the key word right there, guys. Authorized disclosure. You wanted to know? He was authorized.
Like we've said dozens of times, everything that Grush said was greenlit to be said. Everything that he released was okayed to be released. Apparently, next week, there's another News Nation interview with David Grush.
So he's been authorized again.
And he's been authorized again, coincidentally in December, to speak again with News Nation in a deeper interview.
Well, the last time he came forward and he talked about UFOs, a UFO Cold War in which the alleged craft had been brought down, technology scavenged and hardwares, handed over to private companies for research and development, etc. But he said, he reported to Congress on the existence of the decades-long publicly Cold War for recovered exploited physical craft. He wanted to do this because he believed that he was doing the right thing, that no one country, no one nation should have that much power. That's how he kind of looked at it.
Yeah.
So basically, he's doing what you just said all these other guys are about to do.
Yeah. Because ultimately what this does is it will all be kept secret by the military industrial complex if it's not released.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It'll get stuck in these tech companies that will use it and sit on it, and all of it will go to, defense budgets.
It is
kind
a
of deals.
Destabilizing thing is what it is. And
we're not going to get any of that technology ourselves. No. Burchett, for example, just last week mentioned that some of the stuff that he's seen would be able to heat and cool our homes for free. And that would be a world changer.
Like technology that we're talking about is world changing. That's the whole thing. And like Grush said, it's dangerous. It's an 80-year arms race. And if we continue in this secrecy because it's further inhibits the world populace to be prepared. I like this quote from him too. It inhibits the world populace to be prepared for an unexpected non-human intelligence contact scenario. What? And he says, I hope this revelation serves as an ontological shock. There's that word again.
Yep.
Sociologically, and provides a generally uniting issue for nations of the world to reassess their priorities.
It's the same exact thing that Reagan said. It's the same exact thing
It's the same
that
thing.
many other world leaders have said.
Well, look at that.
It's all coming right back in a circle.
Ghosts of Reagan.
Right.
I mean, for real, that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
It's literally the ghosts of yesterday here being repeated again and again.
It's almost like there was a script that was trying to be used that got rejected.
Uh-huh.
And then somebody's like, look, we had a playbook. We need to follow the playbook. Why we went off the playbook, I can't figure out, but we got to go back to the playbook because we're going to get to point B sooner now than we were then.
Yeah. And that does seem to be it. And point B, we theorized on point B 6 years ago.
Yeah.
In Flatwoods.
Yeah.
Something is coming. That was our and we didn't base that off a belief system. We based it off of data.
Yeah.
Well, there's even more data now, and it's terrifying. Back then, it was just a possibility, It was about there's a good chance that this is probably what this is. But now it's like, this is ridiculous. And now you're hearing Grush saying the same words, the world populace to be prepared for an unexpected non-human intelligent contact scenario.
Yeah.
In other words, people going to have to get used to some stuff real fast. Like you keep saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they really are. And so when we're looking at authorized whistleblowers, remember the provision stated that whistleblowers had to be cleared prior to releasing anything publicly. This means Grush was cleared to make these statements by the Pentagon. But why? And by who? And why now? Does this go back to the playbook people? The people that had the script in hand, and they're like, look, this script was here for a reason. For whatever reason, we decided to roll back off of it. But now that somebody's dead, I'm back in charge, and we're gonna push it forward. Everything has been cleared by the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And Grush asserted, my biggest thing that made me jump in the air, because it kind of validated Bob Lazar, was Grush assertions of UFO legacy programs.
The legacy programs of recovered vehicles and innate non-human intelligence.
Yeah.
NIH. Yeah, it really did. And, a lot of people still say, Lazar, he made all that up. Well, I'll tell you guys, I'll say it again. If he made this up, if Lazar dreamed all this up somehow, the man is a psychic.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone needs to study him.
So,
wow.
Yeah, right. So is all of this legal?
That's what I want to know. Is it legal?
It doesn't seem like it.
No, it doesn't.
You would think that with some of this, particularly the technology, especially with the disparaging state that we're in currently financially across the nation and across the globe.
Yeah, no, I can't even get my green screen to work.
This technology that is setting in these hangars could literally be world changing. You're talking about 0 point energy. You're talking about full green energy that doesn't destroy the planet. Yeah. That doesn't mean we have to dig into the earth any longer to go and find minerals that we're going to burn.
I tell you, we've got people out there who want to change the world today. They want to get rid of fossil fuels. They want to get rid of this. They want to get rid of this. I've been saying this for years once all that started. If you know of some way to do better, if there is some way to create zero emission, if there is some way, some magical 0 point energy device that we can all plug into and carry around with us, why are you not releasing it? Because you can't get rid of one without providing something to take up the place. It is ludicrous to think that.
But it comes down to money.
It comes down to money.
We got to get rid. if this, they got to figure out a way to charge for it. It's the same thing as the whole weed debate.
It is.
And legalizing marijuana. They couldn't figure out for the longest time how to tax marijuana.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's okay.
Yeah. Now they've figured it out and it's okay. You can, it's legal.
Which is
we figured out a way to tax it. We're good now.
Yeah. Well, that should tell you the mindset and how this works. It's about who is going to pay the most for the thing. In this case, the thing is a technology that allegedly can change the literal world. What's it worth to you?
Right. Well, the big question beyond what it's worth is it even real?
Yeah, that's true. I 100% agree with you.
Is it
real? Or is this just some
big, crazy, insane disinformation campaign to keep us busy and draw us away from something else?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll say it because I think it needs to be pointed out that there are those who believe this is all disinformation campaign, that it's some broad conspiracy, that it's an agenda of the reptilian overlords or MK Ultras.
They're needing your adrenochrome,
right? I mean, it's stuff like that, right? I mean, they're going to take over the world again, guys. If they wanted to take over the world, they had their chance in 2020. They had their chance in 2020. It didn't happen. Or did it? Or did it happen? No, see, that's how that works.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. And people who are already predisposed to a particular belief system or bias are just going to jump all over that stuff.
Yep.
And they're going to make it however they want. Again, I'm saying this because it's all part of that ontological shock thing. It's interfering with their belief pattern, with their system.
And when you begin to interfere with that, you interrupt the sociological norm.
Yeah.
You interrupt the intellectual norms. You're interrupting the spiritual norms.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
All of that, every one of those interruptions, all at once, generates an immense amount of fear.
Mm-hmm. And they eat fear.
They
I'm
do.
Sorry. No, they don't.
They do. They need your adrenochrome. The thing is, the people who are really needing the adrenochrome and want the adrenochrome are the ones who are out here fear-mongering you every week in, week out on these crazy shows going on and on and on about how this is that and they're demons and they're going to get you. And they're reptilians or reptilian overlords coming in. The only overlords we've got are our AI systems living in our house.
Oh, and those are our overlords. That's not a belief system. That's following the data.
But, the people who are feeding off the adrenochrome are the people who are walking around in fear.
They want to
right
be
now.
afraid.
They want to be afraid. They thrive off the fear because that fear does release chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
It releases adrenaline. It makes you very volatile. And
can you get addicted to it? I want to know that for a fact. Can you get addicted to fear?
Absolutely. Look at all of the people from 2020. And we're not even going to go back that far. Sure. Look at all of the people from 2020 who couldn't put their phones down because all they were doing were reading news articles about doom, death, and destruction.
Anxiety.
They would go from one article about doom, death, and destruction to the next article. It even created its own psychological term. And psychologists started calling it doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling? Now this
doom
is
scrolling.
I love it. I've never heard of it, but man, that's awesome.
Yep. They started calling it doom scrolling because all they were doing was consuming this negative information, terrible news. The articles seemingly got worse and worse and worse, and each one had less truth and fact in it than the next.
Well, you have to remember, they're headlines. What are the headlines do, buddy? What are the headlines for?
They get your attention. They draw you in. They suck you in. They manipulate the rest of the entire article.
Yep.
Because 9 times out of 10, those headlines have nothing to do with the meat and potatoes in the article.
Nope. We've seen it multiple times. Look at the one with the Aurora.
Exactly.
That I had claimed. It's put up here that one day. Giant Aurora, blah, blah, blah. And no one even knew. No one.
Mega red storm.
Yeah. Mega something. Yeah. It's like, what is wrong with you people? I mean, but that's what they're doing. Every time you see that, it's getting clicks. But unfortunately, that's the stuff that gets shared. And, and honestly, when we say things like, there's no truth to this, or, this is all just proof that there are no aliens. It's just the government. They're implanting and this is the truth. This is the honest to God's truth. There are those who believe that they are implanting alien abduction, alien contact dreams into your head while you are sleeping using, they used to use HARP. I guess now they use 5G. I don't know what they use, but I'm telling you, I'm not kidding. This is the thing. Yeah. And what it is, it's people who barely understand technology, who are going along. Yeah, they're going along with someone who basically said, hey, we can use this to do this, which means that they're probably doing it. And no, it really doesn't mean that at all. One of the greatest ones is the thing where they said, what is it, the cell phones, 5G can see through your walls or something?
Oh, yeah. They're saying 5G. Well, it started with 5G, like was going to give everybody cancer and kill us all.
Well, there's more to it, yeah. But
I think even back then I'd address it. Like I had even installed some 5G antennas on the sides of some of the buildings in Lexington and in Louisville. They were 5G boosters.
Your hair fell out.
And then my hair fell out. I forgot about that. Oh my gosh. But I had children after the fact.
God help them.
And I was very close to these towers, or these antenna systems that we were putting in. They were fairly large, but they were boosters, and it's how it gives you the 5G interconnectivity within your city on your cell phone.
Yeah.
It's why all these big cities have 5G access. Then it turned into they're going to be able to see you through your walls, which, I mean, kind of, sort of, yeah.
They can, but it's not what you think.
But it's not what you think.
No, it's not. It's a form of a sonar thing, and yes, it is run through the diabolical, evil AI.
Yep.
That's the only thing I'm gonna, that's the only thing I'll be saying bad things about is AI.
Yeah. AI, the devil.
It's the devil. But to say
alternative intelligence is what I'm starting to call it.
I know, right? But to say these things about these people and just to dismiss them by saying, "Oh, this was all, they're doing this to you. They're making you see this stuff. It's not real. No, this is real," is like saying, "Oh, it's swamp gas," or it's like saying, you made the whole thing up. You're crazy, without actually having any proof whatsoever. But I want to touch on this because this is important. We have cases that go back before there was a government.
Yeah.
So we're going to follow that data. And you remember what you say about the data? What's that you always say about the data?
The data doesn't care about your feelings or what you think.
Or believe.
Or your beliefs.
You can believe whatever lie you want in that case, is what I'm saying. And this is a fact, though. This is a fact. And it comes from March 1st, 1639, of all times. John Winthrop, the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony, recorded this in his diary. This is his words. And this is before there was a United States government. It was barely in America. Earlier in the year, James Everell, a sober, discreet man, and 2 others had been rowing a boat in the muddy river, which flowed through swamplands and emptied into a tidal basin in Charles River, when they saw a great light in the night sky. When it stood still, it flamed up and was about 3 yards square. The governor reported when it ran, it was contracted into the figure of a swan. Over the course of 2 or 3 hours, the boatsman said that the mysterious light ran as swift as an arrow, darting back and forth between them and the village of Charlestown, a distance of approximately 2 miles. Diverse other credible persons saw the same light, after about the same place, Winthrop added. The governor wrote that when the strange apparition finally faded away, the 3 Puritans in the boat were stunned to find themselves 1 mile upstream, as if the light had transported them there. The men had no memory of their ever rowing against the tide.
Abduction.
Okay.
That's as clear as that gets.
Well, there's more than that. I see a UAP report. I see a zigzag orb.
Well, it also said the square.
The square?
They saw the square that contracted into a sphere, not a sphere, but a oblong shape like a hog.
Like a swan.
A swan, yeah. So think like a long oval.
It was 3 yards
or a
square.
tic-tac because they didn't have those back then.
Right. So this happened before.
Yeah.
Way before there was a CIA, an MK Ultra, reptilians or Gargorians or
New World Order,
Nestorians or whatever you want to call them. I don't really care at this point. And I'm not trying to be condescending to people. I'm just trying to say, wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up. Just look at the data, set down the belief systems, and look at the data. We are in trouble if we continue to cling to these belief systems the way that we have. And that's all belief systems.
Well, what this brings us to, with everything, it kind of summates to where we're right now, with the shock and awe with new worldviews.
Paradigm shift.
You know, former Secretary of Defense for Intelligence official Chris Mellon expressed worries about social unrest, economic turmoil, and possible international arms race following further UAP revelations. He emphasizes the need for controlled disclosure to avoid aggressive reactions from UAP and their alleged occupants.
Read that last part again.
He emphasized the need for controlled disclosure to avoid aggressive reactions from UAP and their alleged occupants.
Aggressive reactions from UAP because of disclosure? What
Well,
is he trying to say, Joe?
It sounds to me like he's more worried about us shooting them down more and then them getting tired of it. That's the way it sounds to me. Like, we need to go ahead and do this disclosure thing now so that way we will quit shooting at them and they won't retaliate against us and turn us into, you know, AI
Hamburger.
food.
Yeah, exactly. AI food, so it said. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
AI food.
You could read it that way. You could also read it as to avoid aggressive reaction from UAP and their alleged occupants, as in, you know, there's that whole thing that says that an agreement was made at some point in the past.
True.
What if one of those agreements, treaties, call it whatever you want, stipulated that we weren't supposed to reveal anything? What if one of those agreements was that we weren't supposed to have certain technology? And we broke those agreements and we started going around and blasting these things out of the sky, and we've got that technology now.
Yeah.
What are the repercussions of breaking such a theoretical, hypothetical, speculative contract?
Yeah, I mean, there would be retaliation to that.
One would
And it's almost like the same kind of retaliations that would be if we keep shooting them down. You know, because we've shot how many more down just in the last year?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was the balloon. We knocked a
Agreed.
balloon out of the sky, but we've never been told what the others were.
Oh yeah, well they were balloons too, so you know.
Yeah, they were balloons, except for the one over Alaska.
Yeah, and that one over China. There was one over China after that, or I believe as well. We never heard much about that after.
No, we didn't.
It's very strange how that just disappeared. There was one over Russia, I believe, right before the war started.
Then there was another one over South America.
Well, you think we see what we're trying to say here, right? That's what I'm getting at. So the point is, and that's just the ones we know about.
Yeah, right?
That's just the ones we know about, because there are things going on that we know nothing about. Trust me. But the point being is that there's a possibility, a huge possibility, that I don't even know. I think we're going to go to what Louis Elizondo said. Just right there. Can you read that quote from
Yeah.
Louis?
So in 2021 and 22, interviews with Louis Elizondo titled "Revealing," Louis Elizondo reveals the terrifying truth behind UFOs. Kurt asked Lou if the general public knew or saw what you saw. What would the next week look like? How would the public react? Lou brought his hand up to his chin and rubbed, and he sighed a bit, and then looked straight at the camera and said, "Somber." He scratched his chin again and added, "I think there would be this big exhale." for about a day. And then this turning inward and trying to reflect on what this means to us and our species and ourselves. And I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
There would be this big, like, oh man.
Yeah.
You know, like this massive collective WTF.
And what are we going to do now?
And then now what?
Because this is where it really gets interesting. I don't think it's the shock of not being alone. I think it's the shock of something else. And I think
it's definitely the shock of something else, because everybody on the planet since the early 1990s, when you heard the famous whistle at 9 p.m. on Fox every single week, you tuned into the X-Files and you knew we were not alone. You know, everybody was collectively okay with it at that point, because it became ingrained in our social structure. It became ingrained in pop culture that we're not alone. And they kept telling you over and over and over, we're not alone, we're not alone, we're not alone. Go on to the shows like Sightings, we're not alone, we're not alone, we're not alone. You go into all these other reality or early reality, like docuseries kind of shows. We're not alone, we're not alone, we're not alone. It's been pressed into our psyche for decades that we are not alone. Even when they announced, oh yeah, there's UFOs, they're real, we're not alone, everybody was collectively like, huh, okay. That wasn't the part that's going to break them.
No, it's not. That is not the part. The big part. And I don't think we talk to people all the time, right? We've talked to them. I've talked to them. You talked to them. We've done it collectively. We've done it separately. And they'll say things like, oh, well, they should just tell us. This is get it over with. We're old. We can understand it. We can take it. What if you can't? This was my response. What if you can't take it? And I don't mean what if you can't take it as in you can't take the possibility. I'm talking about the reality. And then there's this other part where they were talking about not too long ago that the people who've had these contacts, they're different. They're changed. Well, that's not a bad thing, though. To some people, allegedly it is. To some people, there's this whole thing where they have these issues, like really bad stuff happens to them, right?
Yeah.
The problem I'm having with all of this, Joe, is that all of this, the catastrophic disclosure, the controlled disclosure, the contact, all of this, it sounds like we're talking about one event. It sounds like we're talking about one species making contact. It sounds like we're talking about one group. But the reality, unfortunately, is that it may be a lot more.
Yeah.
A lot more. And I'm not talking about some science fiction thing here. I'm talking about you're waking up and you're finding out that things like, the Federation from Star Trek, it may be real.
Yeah, it was loosely based on something that was there.
It may be real.
Yeah.
Remember, UFO history is nonlinear. And we're just talking about the physical side of these things. We're not even talking about technology. The technology has been shown that these things can bend space and time.
Yeah.
Bend space time. What?
And if you're bending space time,
what? Think about
light
that.
years don't matter anymore.
Bingo. There you go.
Like however many light years away these things were doesn't matter anymore.
Doesn't matter.
Because you're taking a ream of fabric. Let's just hypothetically to play this out for you guys. We're taking a ream of fabric that is, 10 yards by 10 yards, right? And then you go 10 yards up into the ceiling and you attach a string to the very middle of the fabric. The quickest way to make the two corners that are 20 feet apart touch is to lift that string 10 feet in the air, and suddenly those two corners are touching one another.
Well,
you took them from being so far, the farthest possible places apart from one another on the same fabric,
Yes.
to now touching
Yes.
in one fluid motion. bending space-time would do that. You no longer have to have
Space-time,
craft
gravity,
that could
it all
travel
goes
for
together.
speeds in crazy distances over time. You can just be like, okay, we're here now.
Yes.
You
Yes.
punch in the coordinates where you want to be and then press a button and you're there.
And you're
Or
there.
not even that. You think where you want to go and you put your hand on a thing and you're there.
I'm telling you, this can get very interesting. There are people who are thinking that these are aliens, Joe. What if they're not aliens? We've said this multiple times. What if this isn't aliens? What if this is something that is so far beyond you just don't even know? What if there are
What if
people
it's
around?
star jelly babies?
Well, better yet, think about this for just 1 second. We live in a whatever this reality is. We're tuned to this reality. We're in this phase of reality, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's only what we can see. That's only what we can perceive and interact with at this point. What about the things that could be out of phase with us at this point? Theoretically,
Right.
There could be entire
And
societies.
here we're getting into Carl Sagan's demonstration of, 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional objects. What if we're dealing with extra-dimensional objects?
We're talking about
entities?
fourth dimensional. What if there's gateways that, pop in and out of times, so to speak? These are the kind of things that can cause ontological shock.
Yeah.
When you have to deal with stuff like that, and then you're thinking, do I really even need to go to work today?
Right.
That's what
What's
they're
the point
worried
in
about.
going to school?
What's the point of doing
What's the point in
anything?
going to work?
What's the point of religion? What's the point of the? And really, that's what they're afraid of.
Yeah.
That's what they're afraid.
That's one of the arguments.
Remember the whole thing about, what was it, about 3 years ago, when they had the guy come in and they did the big study on religion and how people to get people ready for possible alien contact in the future, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Why do you think they were doing that? Why do you think they were doing that, guys?
The same reason the Catholic Church over a decade ago said that,
It's okay.
it's okay. It doesn't go into any kind of contradiction with our faith, because what we believe in is a creator God who created everything. And that means he created these guys too.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, I understand ontological shock. I understand it more than probably most of the people who are listening to this show, because when you have an experience to where you're face to face with this reality, whatever it is, and you have to accept that is now reality, it does things to you. You start thinking about things. You review your belief systems. And in my case, I walked away from everything for years. And it took a long time to understand, wait, it's the same coin. It's just flipped over. This is the same thing. We just have to learn how to look at everything with new terminologies.
Yeah.
With a new way, in a new light, in my opinion anyway. That's the way I see it. I think we can survive ontological shock. But I think that there's a lot of chaos. There is a lot of potential issues that will arise from this. And a lot of those are going to come from belief systems and people who are adamant and unyielding about their belief systems.
Well, for anybody who's curious about how all of this could possibly work out, I will just reference you to the old TV series and movie that was groundbreaking and covered so many tropes. Alien Nation.
Oh yeah,
it was one of the best series out there, and it covered exactly what we're talking about right now.
Way ahead of its time. I mean, they were physical beings, which was different, and we may not be talking about physical beings, but it's the same thing. People had to adjust real fast.
And you saw segments where churches were preaching against them being there and talking about how, they were abominations.
Yep.
And you saw different politicians who were going out and rallying against them and going out for human rights and not alien rights.
Yep.
And you saw all of these different things. That is what would really happen after about 2 or 3 days. There'd be that first few days of collective, like, oh God, followed up by, we've got to watch out for us.
Come on,
You know,
dude. We watched
it becomes an us versus them at that
we
point.
watched a whole nation, half of a nation, go out and try to shoot down a balloon at 50,000 feet.
Yeah.
Your bullets don't go 50,000 feet, guys, but it didn't stop them. They were still going to do it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what you just said. We got to get them. We got to get them before they get us.
The us versus them.
It's the wrong mentality to have in this situation, guys.
It is.
It's the wrong mentality. I'm not going to sit here and preach to you. That's not what I'm here for. But I'm telling you, we got to get okay with a lot of things real quick and realize.
But you know, we have a set of leaders who are in elected office right now, like Burchett, who I think would be a great candidate for being one of the people who are in office, not necessarily presidential office, but being in a position he's in for when this takes place, because he's already acting like the liaison.
Yeah. We are
he's
going to need someone who can interact and represent.
There's got to be somebody who could advocate for everybody.
Yeah. And it can't, I'm sorry, it can't be, I honestly don't care who the president is, but I haven't seen a president who's worthy of that mantle at this point. This has
Not
to
at
be
all.
someone.
Not a single president in the last, since probably Reagan probably could have done it.
Maybe.
Because he was already in the mindset to do it.
Maybe, but I think that's not it, though. I don't think it should be anything
But
like
yeah,
that.
no, it shouldn't be the president. It needs to be like a committee, a group of people that aren't even elected officials who are like, you guys aren't crazy. There's already a group, guys.
Yeah.
They refer to themselves as the ambassadors of the paranormal.
Yeah.
They might not be the best that the world has to offer, but they're who the world needs.
And now you realize our purpose and the mission.
Yeah.
No, that's hilarious. But no, I mean, that's again why I think that a lot of the contact things do happen. I think that they've gotten away from, whoever they are, have gotten away from trying to contact these people who are supporting this agenda that they may not like, especially if they're they're still in their technology. They're shooting them down. I mean, that's what we've been told. Yeah, we're going to hear more about this too, and then we're going to have to figure out what we do about that as a species, as a collective. Are we okay with someone waging war on possibly a superior life form who has just so far been very merciful to us?
Yeah, right. That could really wreck shop if they needed to.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's time to just stop and reassess the situation before we do something really stupid and end up, I don't know, reset like we did before.
Well, regardless, one way or another, this is something that society is going to have to accept.
I agree.
Regardless of how great it seems, regardless of how terrifying it seems, this is something that we as humans, as humanity, are going to have to come to grips with and be okay with, and hold our judgment for a moment and actually use real proper judgment rather than presumptive judgment, and see what is really on the table, see what's really there, examine all the evidence. And if this is something that, because to me it looks like this is all potentially could be great. These people who are out here wanting a utopian world, this might be how you guys get it. Okay.
Yeah.
So y'all gonna have to be okay with it. And, and it's just, it's different.
It's
When you force yourself, I want everybody who's listening right now to just, unless you're driving, stop what you're doing for just a moment and think what your initial response would be. If right now, during this broadcast, you were told that 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, that we have all this stuff, and you were shown, you saw it. It wasn't just that you were told. And then in the following days, what would you do? Where would that put you immediately? where would you be sitting as soon as that information came out? Would it be shock? Would it be terror? Would it be, what would you be feeling? And start trying to work through that series of events right now. Because the sooner you can work yourself through that psychologically, the easier it's going to be for you when it actually happens. Because you'll have already kind of treaded the waters a little bit. Yeah, we haven't faced the real deal just yet.
No.
But
we've only heard words.
Exactly.
Stories and accounts. See that thing back there behind us right now? See that clock? It's ticking.
Yeah.
That's what it's doing. It's ticking. I mean, eventually, we're going to have to come face to face with whatever this is. And by face to face, you know what I mean by that. How are you going to feel at that point? That's where we need to go.
Because honestly, if it was coming to enslave us, if it was coming to take us, it'd have done it.
It's not doing that.
It would have done it. We're either going to have to figure out that the planet Earth is the trailer park trash of the galaxy that nobody wants to deal with, and we're going to be left out of this whole thing forever. Yeah. Or we're going to have to come to grips with things where we're able to adapt. Mm-hmm. We're able to
play nice with others.
Play nice and go beyond our current worldviews.
Yep. And
be a lot more accepting of a whole lot of different stuff.
Yeah, it may be a really, really big universe out there. And
yeah.
We may be just now getting into the point to where we get accepted into some, some higher understanding of this. Maybe, we're not seen as apes anymore. I don't know.
And I mean, the thing is were I not married, I would be the best Captain Kirk out there.
Probably.
I would interlope with every intergalactic
Orions.
Species possible.
Yeah, I figured you would. Doesn't surprise me.
But it'd be a whole slew of star jelly babies everywhere.
Oh God. Okay. Well, next week? Next week's episode, we're going to continue to talk about some of this potential and the way that people are thinking about things. And I do believe we're going to be discussing some things with the good Reverend.
So,
yeah,
that'll be a good episode.
It's going to be a good episode. And don't forget our Christmas specials coming up. So everybody needs to stay tuned for all that fun stuff. This is going to be a very interesting month.
It is.
I don't know. It's going to be it's what you expect. It's
may not
be what you expect. But
no, because this year we didn't do our Krampus special, which would have been tonight.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
So we're rerouting temporarily to cover what is really pressing at the moment.
Yep. So stay tuned. I'm sure we'll have some festive stuff coming up. Trust me, there's going to be at least one good.
Yeah, there's going to be at least one
festive episode, but we have some pretty heavy stuff that is coming up, and you're going to want to stay tuned to it and stay out ahead of all this. And again, Grush in December 11th, so expect a special report probably to follow shortly after that. And that's about all I got for you this week, I think. What about you, Joe?
Well, guys, that's all that I've got as well. So if you want to continue supporting Wild and Weird Radio, all you got to do is tell your friends, share it around, and join us over on YouTube for the live every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a great time. Everybody that shows up has a blast. It is a very audience-driven show. We show up with a general topic we want to run in, but we never wind up covering that topic fully because it's your show and we let you guys take the reins. So join us Thursday nights, 8 p.m. for our Wild and Weird Radio Live. You will not regret it. It's one of the funnest times. We look forward to it every week, and we hear that from so many people as well. If you want to report your own sighting or an encounter, head over to wildandweirdwv.com and go to the Report a Sighting tab. Click that, fill out all the information, and then when you press send, it will send us an email and we will be notified to go take a look. And if it's a report that we want to get involved in, to the extent of coming to investigate, we will contact you. But unless there's a need for boots on the ground, and if we can't make it, we'll have somebody else do it that we can trust, because we're interconnected with different researchers covering the entire nation and across the globe now at this point.
And possibly the universe.
Possibly the universe. Possibly the universe. Ambassadors of the universe.